Imagine a woman with Down syndrome walking into a luxury hotel expecting to be treated as normal, but instead faces humiliation and stares. The staff and guests refuse her respect, openly mocking her. But just when the situation seems hopeless, Keanu Reeves appears. His actions don't just change the atmosphere in the hotel, they make everyone think about what true humanity means. What happened next? This is a story you will remember for a long time. The luxurious hotel in the city center had an atmosphere of glamour and sophistication. The huge hall, decorated with crystal chandeliers, shone under bright spotlights, and the soft smell of expensive perfume filled the air. The guests, dressed in elegant suits and dresses, chatted among themselves, smiled, and enjoyed the privileged atmosphere. The hotel staff moved quickly and almost silently, fulfilling every request with professional grace. In the midst of this perfect order, a woman suddenly appeared who was different from the rest of the guests. She looked simple and a little uncertain. Her movements were cautious, and her eyes were curiously scanning the space around her. She was holding a small travel backpack that looked completely out of place in this environment. The woman clearly did not meet the standards of this place. Her clothes were simple, her face radiated kindness, but at the same time, it was full of uncertainty. She had Down syndrome, and this immediately attracted the attention of others. The guests sitting in the lounge began to look at each other, their gazes filled with surprise and slight disdain. Some of them discussed her among themselves, throwing short phrases and smiles. Even the staff, who usually demonstrated absolute politeness and professionalism, began to look at her with undisguised curiosity that bordered on judgment. The woman approached the reception desk. She took a small envelope out of her backpack and placed it on the counter, waiting for someone to pay attention to her. Her hands were trembling a little, and her eyes were darting around as if she was trying to avoid meeting anyone's eyes. However, time passed, and no one was in a hurry to serve her. The staff stood aside, attending to other guests, and the woman continued to wait. After a while, an administrator came to the counter. He looked at her with a slight surprise and a somewhat arrogant expression. The woman handed him an envelope and explained something. He opened it, quickly skimmed the text, and didn't even seem to try to hide his disbelief. His demeanor was dry, and his tone of voice, although polite, had a touch of disdain. The woman listened attentively to his words, nodding her head, but her expression grew increasingly uncertain. Other employees noticed the scene and began to discuss the situation among themselves. Some of them smiled, others just shrugged their shoulders. The guests in the lounge did not stand aside either. They watched what was happening, and some even openly pointed at the woman. The atmosphere in the lounge changed. The light and friendly atmosphere turned into a tense and cold one. The woman continued to stand at the counter, hoping for help. She held her backpack close to her, as if it was her only protection in this big and hostile world. She did not look at the people around her, but focused all her attention on the administrator, who again began to say something in a harsh and dry tone. Her eyes filled with tears, but she held on, trying not to show her emotions. At that moment, the hotel door opened and a man entered the room. He was immediately recognized. It was Keanu Reeves. Dressed simply, without any pathos, he looked calm and confident. His appearance caused a slight whisper among the guests, and some even took out their phones to take photos. However, he did not pay attention to the crowd. His gaze immediately settled on the woman at the counter. Keanu quickly assessed the situation. He noticed the reactions of the guests, the behavior of the staff, and the woman's confused look. His face remained calm, but there was a slight hint of irritation in his eyes. He approached the counter, determined. Everyone around him became quiet, watching what would happen next. The woman, noticing his presence, looked surprised. She didn't know how to react, but her face relaxed a little, as if she felt that she was no longer alone. The hotel staff also froze, clearly not expecting this turn of events. All eyes in the room were on Keanu, who walked closer to the woman and the counter. His movements were calm and confident. He stood next to the woman, showing that he supported her. The staff looked confused, not knowing what to do next. The atmosphere in the room changed. The silence that had prevailed was filled with anticipation. Everyone was waiting to see what Keanu would say or do. The woman who had looked confused and humiliated a moment ago now stood a little more confident. Her gaze changed, and a hint of hope appeared in it. She looked at Keanu as if trying to understand why he had decided to intervene. And he, without saying a word, just continued to stand next to her, radiating support. At that moment, it became clear that the situation would not remain unchanged. What started out as just another day at a luxury hotel turned into an event that no one would ever forget. After Keanu Reeves appeared in the hotel lobby, the tense atmosphere began to change. Guests and staff were impressed by his strong support for the woman. However, this was only the beginning of the events that would unfold over the next 3 days. On the first day after his intervention, the woman was finally able to get a room. Keanu, seeing the unwillingness of the staff to cooperate, decided to personally pay for her stay. He went to the front desk, took out his credit card, and asked to register her for a few days. The administrator, although looking embarrassed, was forced to comply with this request. All the guests watching the scene were amazed. For them, it was an unexpected display of kindness from a celebrity who usually avoided public gestures. The woman, who now felt a little more confident, went up to her room. It was a simple but cozy room located on one of the upper floors of the hotel. She looked around the room, noticing the warm light coming in through the large windows. She opened her backpack, took out her small belongings, and placed them neatly on the table. Despite her humiliating experience in the lobby, her face began to radiate calm. Meanwhile, Keanu did not stand by. He decided to make sure that the hotel staff understood the importance of treating all guests well. After he escorted the woman to her room, he turned to the receptionist and quietly but insistently asked to ensure her comfortable stay. His tone was calm, but every word sounded confident. The staff couldn't help but agree, because the hotel's reputation was at stake. The first day ended quite calmly for the woman. She decided not to leave her room, enjoying the peace and comfort. It was important for her to feel safe. She spent the evening reading a book she had brought with her and writing down her thoughts in her notebook. In these notes, she described her impression of the day, which had started so tense but ended in a completely different way. The second day began with new challenges. In the morning, she decided to go down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. As soon as she entered the room, several guests noticed her again. Although most of them tried to hide their surprise, a few people still gave her judgmental glances. The woman noticed this but tried to ignore it. She found a seat by the window and sat down, watching the morning traffic. Keanu, who was also in the restaurant, noticed her loneliness. He decided to join her. He approached the table and sat down across from her and smiled in a friendly manner. Their presence together attracted the attention of everyone present. Now the guests' gazes were more full of curiosity than judgment. No one could understand why the famous actor was so supportive of a stranger. Throughout the day, Keanu helped the woman discover the city. He suggested that she visit several local attractions. At first she was hesitant, but his confidence and calmness helped her to trust him. Together they walked through the Central Park, visited an art gallery, and even went to a small cafe where Keanu treated her to tea. Their interaction was simple, but filled with sincerity. The woman felt that she could be herself around him. On the same day, the hotel staff began to change their attitude. The manager, who had previously been cold, now personally met the woman in the lobby, asked her about her impressions, and offered to help. Other employees also tried to correct their behavior, smiling at her and offering to help her with any small things. They realized that their behavior was wrong and tried to correct it. The third day was the culmination of this story. The hotel organized a small charity event where Keanu Reeves gave a speech. He spoke about the importance of treating all people equally, regardless of their status, appearance, or characteristics. His words were simple but very sincere. He spoke about the importance of supporting each other and creating a world where everyone can feel accepted. The woman was among the guests of the event. She was standing aside, but her eyes were shining with joy. These 3 days were a real challenge for her, but at the same time they showed her that there are people who are ready to support her. After the event, many guests came up to her to talk to her. They expressed their admiration for her courage and thanked her for being a part of this event. These 3 days changed not only the woman, but also everyone who witnessed this story. The hotel, which was once a symbol of luxury, has now become a place where people learn compassion and mutual respect. And Keanu Reeves, as always, remained modest, but his actions left an indelible mark on the hearts of everyone present. On the 4th day after the events that changed the atmosphere in the hotel, all the participants in this story began to reconsider their attitudes towards the world and each other. Guests and staff, who had previously been indifferent or even arrogant, began to reflect on their actions and the impact they had on others. However, as it turned out, the effect of Keanu Reeves' intervention spread far beyond the hotel. The woman who had become the center of attention because of her humiliation now looked more confident. She walked through the hotel corridors with an ease that had previously been unattainable for her. Her demeanor changed as she felt the support she had been missing. She started greeting staff, smiling at other guests, and even allowed herself to ask for coffee in the lounge area. Several guests who had previously looked at her with suspicion now approached her, asking how she was doing and engaging her in conversation. The hotel had a new initiative planned for that day. Inspired by the events of the previous days, the hotel manager decided to organize an open meeting dedicated to inclusivity and equality. It was a spontaneous idea, but it was supported not only by the staff, but also by the guests. Keanu Reeves, who has already become a symbol of this story, was invited as a keynote speaker. Although he rarely agreed to make public appearances, he made an exception this time. A lot of people gathered in the hall. Among them were both hotel guests and employees who decided to put aside their business to hear something important. Keanu took the stage without any extra pomp. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans. His appearance emphasized that he was not interested in appearance or status, but in what he had to say. In his speech, Keanu told a story about how kindness can change lives. He spoke about the importance of seeing in people what lies beyond their appearance, status, or opportunities. His words were simple but insightful. He shared his own experience and reminded the audience that everyone has the power to make someone's day better. The woman who became the heroine of this story was sitting in the audience. Her eyes were shining with tears, but they were tears of joy and gratitude. She listened to Keanu with special attention, as if every word he said was addressed to her. She realized that her presence in this hotel was important not only to her, but to many other people. After the speech, the room erupted in applause. The guests and staff gave a standing ovation, some even coming up to Keanu to thank him for his words. But he remained humble, accepting the thanks with a slight nod of his head. For him, this was not a speech for fame or recognition. He just wanted to remind people of the importance of kindness. After the event, the hotel started a new tradition. Every Monday, the management organized short meetings for the staff to discuss the importance of inclusivity and consider ways to improve service. In addition, it was decided to hold charity events to support people with special needs. The woman, who had previously been afraid of drawing attention to herself, now became part of these initiatives. She agreed to help the hotel organize programs for guests with special needs. Her experience became a valuable resource in helping us understand how to create a more welcoming environment. On the 5th day of her stay, something else important happened. One of the guests, who had previously been one of the most arrogant in his behavior, decided to personally apologize to her. He came to her table during breakfast and quietly said a few words. She looked at him in surprise, but then smiled and nodded. This gesture became a symbol that even those who make mistakes can change if given the chance. Meanwhile, the story began to spread outside the hotel. One of the guests who witnessed the events wrote a post on social media that quickly went viral. People from all over the world expressed their admiration for what Keanu Reeves had done and how the story had made many people think about their actions. The comments were filled with gratitude, as well as their own stories of people who also experienced moments of humiliation, but found support. Keanu, as always, stayed away from this attention. The main thing for him was that this situation had a real impact. He knew he had done the right thing, and that was enough for him. By the end of her stay at the hotel, the woman felt not only like a guest, but also part of something bigger. She had found friends who supported her and the confidence she had been missing. Those few days changed her life, but more importantly, they changed the lives of many people around her. After the woman's 5th day at the hotel, the changes that began with her arrival became even more noticeable. Her story, which began with humiliation and superiority, turned into a vivid example of humanity and transformation of social consciousness. The following days were full of new events that further strengthened this positive trend. On the 6th day, the woman decided to attend an event organized by the hotel in partnership with local charities. The event was dedicated to supporting people with special needs, and its goal was to raise funds for an inclusive education program. The event organizers invited local artists, musicians, and speakers to share their stories and inspire the audience. The woman was not just a guest at the event, but also one of the main participants. She prepared a short presentation about her experience at the hotel. Her story was honest and emotional. She talked about the fears and difficulties she faced, but also emphasized how important the support she received was. Her speech was met with sincere applause from the audience. Some guests could not hold back tears as her words touched everyone's heart. Keanu Reeves, who also attended the event, listened attentively. His support was tangible even without words. After the speech, he approached the woman to express his respect and gratitude for her courage. This moment was captured by many journalists covering the event and became a symbol of deep respect for each person. After the event, the hotel continued to change. Employees, inspired by the woman's story, initiated the creation of an inclusivity training program for all staff. The trainings included not only theoretical aspects, but also practical exercises that helped them understand how to interact with people with special needs. The hotel management set a goal to become an example for other hospitality establishments. The 7th day was the culmination of everything that had happened during the week. The hotel organized a large charity dinner, which was attended not only by guests but also by representatives of various NGOs. The event became a real celebration of humanity and mutual assistance. The tables in the banquet hall were decorated with flowers, and the atmosphere was filled with warmth and joy. The culmination of the dinner was a ceremony where special awards were presented to those who made the greatest contribution to the development of inclusiveness. A woman received one of these awards for her courage and for her story being a catalyst for change. She accepted the award with tears in her eyes, sincerely thanking everyone who supported her. During lunch, several guests came up to her to pay their respects. They told her how her story had inspired them to change their attitudes toward others. One of the guests, a businessman, shared that after hearing her speech, he decided to introduce a program to employ people with disabilities in his company. Another guest, a teacher, said that he planned to hold a special lesson at school on the topic of tolerance. Meanwhile, Keanu, as always, remained modest. He watched the events unfold and was happy that his intervention could change so many lives. This was more important to him than any awards or recognition. He realized that the most important thing was that the changes affected not only individuals but the whole community. After the lunch, the woman decided to take another step that would have seemed impossible to her before. She offered her help as a volunteer at a local charity organization. Her offer was gladly accepted, as her experience and sincerity could be a source of inspiration for many. Now she felt that she had the power to help others as she had been helped. The 8 days she spent at the hotel were the most important stage in her life. They not only changed the way she looked at herself, but also showed her that the world could be kinder and more open. She left the hotel feeling deeply grateful and determined to continue on this path. As she said goodbye to the staff, many came up to her to wish her well. A manager who had previously been indifferent thanked her personally for being the source of such important change. He admitted that her presence helped him to reconsider his own values and priorities. Keanu, who came to see her off, said a few words in farewell. Although his words were short, they had a deep meaning. He wished her not to be afraid to be herself and to always remember that her story matters. This story remained in the memory of everyone who witnessed it. It showed how important it is to support each other and how even one act can change the fate of many people. And although the woman left the hotel, her influence was felt for a long time, inspiring others to do good deeds in humanity. When the woman left the hotel after 8 unforgettable days, her story began to gain momentum in the media space. A post on social media written by one of the guests went viral and attracted the attention of many people around the world. Journalists began writing articles about the event, and television channels made stories about how one act of Keanu Reeves changed the atmosphere and life in the luxury hotel. A woman who used to live in the shadows and was afraid to attract attention to herself has now become a symbol of strength and courage. She received invitations to speak at conferences, participate in charity events, and tell her story. At first, it was hard for her to accept her new role because she was not used to such attention. But over time, she realized that her experience could help many other people who face prejudice and difficulties. One of the first events she spoke at was an international conference on inclusion and equality. She was invited as an honored guest and asked to share her story. She looked a little confused on stage, but as soon as she started speaking, everyone in the room froze. Her words were filled with sincerity and emotion. She talked about the day she first walked into the hotel, the humiliation she felt, and how Keanu Reeves' intervention changed everything. She spoke about the importance of support, about how even one good deed can change a person's life. Her story brought tears to many listeners, and after the speech, dozens of people came up to her, thanking her for her courage. She realized that now her voice can become a voice for those who are unable to speak about their problems. Meanwhile, Keanu Reeves continued to stay in the shadows. He avoided making public statements about the incident, but his actions spoke for themselves. He made a generous donation to support charities that dealt with inclusivity issues and continued to support projects aimed at helping people with disabilities. On the 10th day of her stay at the hotel, she decided to do something she had never done before. She organized her own charity initiative, which aimed to create educational programs for people with Down syndrome. Her idea was to enable these people to realize themselves, gain skills, and find their place in the world. Her project quickly found support. Volunteers from all over the city volunteered to help, and some large companies expressed a desire to become sponsors. The program was called Light of Equality, and within a few months of its launch, it began to show results. People from different parts of the country came to learn more about the initiative and implement similar programs in their communities. The woman also decided to leave her mark on the hotel where it all started. She suggested creating a special corner in the lobby dedicated to the stories of people who had faced difficulties but were able to overcome them. The management supported this idea, and within a few weeks, a stand with the inscription appeared in the lobby. Everyone matters. The stand featured photos, stories, and quotes from people who inspired others through their actions. This stand became a real attraction for hotel guests. People stopped to read the stories, share their thoughts, and even leave their own messages. This simple but powerful reminder of the power of humanity changed the atmosphere of the hotel forever. However, the story had the greatest impact on those who were directly involved in the events. The hotel staff, who had initially acted arrogantly, now set an example for others. They began to show more attention and compassion to each guest, regardless of their status or characteristics. Their transformation was evident and served as a reminder that change is possible if there is a will and understanding. Keanu Reeves, who was watching these events from afar, was pleased that his small act had caused such a wave of positive change. For him, it was another proof that kindness always matters. His participation in this story has become part of his own philosophy, to act without waiting for fame or recognition. A year after this story began, the woman received an award for her contribution to the development of inclusiveness. At the award ceremony, she said, This award is not just for me. It belongs to everyone who supported me and believed that change is possible. We can all be a light for others. Her words have become a symbol of this story, a story about humanity, kindness, and the power that every person has to change the world for the better.